In this video, we'll take a look at equations with fractions. These are the hardest, I would say. Excuse me. And I'm going to teach you a method that might seem a little difficult to grasp at first, but I promise you the more you practice it, it will actually make your life a lot easier, because we don't want to really deal with fraction operations through an entire equation. So if we do that, then it's going to create a more opportunity for error. Now, I know that the first step that I'm going to teach you to follow that's going to help us might be a little complicated at first, but I promise you the more you do it, you'll learn it well, and when you learn that method well, it will make the rest of the equation easier to solve with less opportunity for errors. So what is the goal when an equation has fractions? Well, the goal for us is to clear the fractions from the equation as soon as we can, possibly right at the very beginning. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to have you change one thing on here. I'm going to have you change LCD. Everywhere you see LCD, I want you to change it to LCM. We're going to look at the denominators of the fractions. And what we're going to do is we are going to figure out from the denominators what would be the common multiple of those denominators. And we're going to multiply both sides of the equation by the least common multiple. We're not going to change them into common denominators. We're going to cancel them by multiplying by that common number. So it's kind of like multiplying by a reciprocal a little bit. So the question is, if there's two circumstances. One of them is there's fractions and there's other terms with it. The other one is there's a fraction, but there's just parentheses with it on that side. Okay. So what's the difference and how do we have to approach those? Well, we always want to look to see if there are parentheses. If there are fractions and they are outside the parentheses, so there are parentheses and the fractions are outside, as long as the rest of the terms are inside the parentheses on that particular side of the equation, then we multiply only the fractions by the least common multiple, because we only have to cancel the fractions if the other ones are separated with parentheses. But if there are no parentheses and the fractions are with other terms, then all terms must be multiplied by that. So if you look at this first example, there are two fractions, but there's no parentheses. Those fractions have other terms with them, which means that those terms are also going to have to multiply by the least common multiple. So now let's determine what is the least common multiple of 2 and 4, meaning what number is either 4 or greater, and 2 will also go into it. Well, that would be 4 itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose to multiply everything in these equations by 4. And let me show you how I'm going to write it out. If it's a fraction, I'm going to write it out as if I'm multiplying, and 4 is a fraction by writing it over 1. If I'm multiplying with a whole number, then I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and put it in parentheses together to multiply. 4 times this one is 4 over 1 times x over 4, or 1x over 4. And then you have 7 times 4. Now that looks really complicated, but each one of these is now going to simplify. And when they do, you are going to find that what you have left is a fraction, or is an equation without fractions, which is what we want. So on this one, how does that happen? Well, this gives me 4 times 3 is 12. 1 times 2 is 2. And that gives me 12 over 2x. How does that cancel? Well, that fraction can divide now. This means the same thing as 6x. Then on the second part, that's just a number. So plus 4 times 2 is 8. Then we have another set of fractions over here. And again, 4 times 1 is 4x. 1 times 4 is 4. How does that cancel? Well, 4 can be divided by itself, and that's going to give me 1, or 1x. And then 7 times 4 is 28. So now there's no more fractions left, which is what I wanted. It makes it a lot easier. And so my goal now is to get the variables on the same side. So I'm going to subtract the 1x because it's smaller than 6x. That's going to give me 5x plus 8 equals 28. And then from here, I just need to finish solving. So I'm going to subtract, and I get 5x equals 20. And then if I divide by 5, I get x equals 4. So that's my answer to this equation. Now the second one is a little bit easier because none of this has to be multiplied by the least common multiple. This does because it's on the other side, but because all of this is on the same side and it's separated with parentheses, I can leave it separate. So since there's only one fraction, it's easy to find the least common multiple. It's 3 over 1. So what does this give us? Well, that gives me 6 over 3. Well, what does that give you? Well, that cancels to plain old 2. So I'm going to be distributing a 2 now, and then 8 times 4, or 3 is 24. So now there's no more fraction left. I don't have to distribute this fraction. Instead, I'm going to distribute a whole number. 2 times 2x is 4x, and 2 times 2 is 4. And then from here, it's a basic equation to solve. So I'm going to get rid of the addition first. I get 24 minus 4 equals 20. And then if I divide by 4, I'm going to get x equals 5. So knowing what to multiply by and doing it the proper way at the beginning is going to make your process a lot faster and less likely to be open to errors. So that's it for solving regular equations. In the next video, we are going to talk about a unique set of equations called literal equations. And we'll talk about